I want to ask you a question, Mr. T-Panda. Do you know what GMI means or WGMI?
WGMI. No, I don't actually. Can you you want to enlighten me a little bit?
Yeah, it means gonna make it, or we are gonna make it, or
We are gonna make
WAGMI, we are gonna make it. WAGMI. No, that hasn't made it into the normie nomenclature yet? Okay. It's
I
kind of a
haven't heard
crypto
it.
thing. It's what you tell crypto people tell other crypto people when your project is doing really well. You go, bro, we're totally gonna make it. And when you add an N to the front, and of course that's the opposite. We're not gonna make it. So yeah, you say that when your project's not doing well, or somebody buys something that you disagree with. You go, man, you're not gonna make it, bro. If you're buying some dumb shit like that, you're not gonna make it. So just wanted to get you caught up on the latest because I know you're not a
Right.
crypto guy, and I got a lot of crypto fans now. So we gotta bridge the audience, and this is kind of cool because we're back to Zyori +1, dude. I busted out the old overlays. I haven't done one of these in
Hey.
ages. I was sort of doing them with Axie, but then that turned into Axie Tuesdays, and now Axie Tuesdays is probably going to move to like the official Axie channels. And I was traveling, so I lost track of that. So it's cool to just do a casual podcast, with a regular non-crypto guy that's also very intelligent, very forward-thinking, and very much into esports. We might be able to convince you to come the Axie way at some point. And of course, any of our Dota viewers will certainly recognize you, and any of our handful of viewers from Finland will certainly recognize you as well. And well, why don't you introduce yourself, buddy? Give us the proper pronunciation of your name and give us a little intro of what you've been up to.
Well, you're sweet talking me here. Thank you so much for that. So I'm known as Rikumiku-san, also known as Rikumikko Kangasmaki. A Finnish young lad. I'm 28 years old. Was born in '93 in the cold country known as Finland, here in the north. In the also Finnish Chernobyl, known as Kouvola. We have a very identical Chernobyl city in Finland called Kouvola, which is just a concrete city, basically. Okay. So we referred to that as our Eastern Bloc city in Finland.
Wow.
I've been doing esports for about 4 years now, casting, hosting, interviews, both in Finnish and in English, so bilingual. Majority English. So as you can see, I'm not a Finnish guy, but I don't have the most perfect accent. I could if I focus more on what I want to pronounce, but that's a whole nother story.
God,
That's
weird.
also a horrible impersonation.
That's so
of
weird to me.
My other accents.
Well, it's good
But,
enough that it's actually passable. So it feels like there's this whole alter ego of T-Panda that I'm not privy to because you studied in the UK, right?
Yeah. I was a kid though, but
kid,
yeah, I
yeah,
lived
okay.
I lived 2 years between Oxford and London. So I was in a small town, village called High Wycombe. You could
Pinky
almost,
out,
I think
dude.
it's a university city or something like that these days. But from High Wycombe, I was in there for 2 years, and I also did 3 years in Belgium, in Brussels. I was at a European school when I was a teenager, so I was 14 to 17. Then came back to Finland, and
Wow. Okay.
yeah, moved around, seen the world, done some traveling, played games. Haven't really been to more than just one LAN event actually outside of Finland. That was in 2019 in Los Angeles in
Los Angeles,
Warcraft
yeah.
3 and Clash Royale. So that was an experience.
That's what I'm curious. Like, what's your breadth of games? Because I know you've done a lot of Dota. I know you've done a bunch of Rocket League. Those are the two I know you mostly for. But I guess Clash Royale is also in there. That's cool.
So my my full list of games, I might also be missing a couple, but what I do know is I have the biggest collection of games that anybody in Finland has cast. So we have Dota, Rocket League, PUBG, which I've been hosting, CS:GO, which I've been hosting and doing interviews with like HLTV top 30 teams, Arena of Valor, Buggy Beach Racing. I did that in Hartwell Arena. Do you know Hartwell Arena in Finland?
I don't. Sorry, I haven't been to Finland, so no.
Hopefully you will one day. It's the biggest ice hockey / event venue in Finland. So I've done a hosting event in that. So that's off my bucket list.
Gotcha.
I've done Clash Royale, Warcraft 3. I've done some hosting outside of esports with some AI events, kind of like Robot Wars kind of casting. And 3 weeks ago, I was also hosting the Nordic's biggest XR, which is like an extended reality event. Really cool stuff, with my VR glasses on and hosting an event that was wild.
See, that all blows my mind because I've always been more of a single game guy. You know, like I could always have one primary game, maybe a secondary one that I play casually, you know, a little World of Warcraft in my later years when I needed a break from Dota. You know, we played a little PUBG, played a little Overwatch, and, you know, I worked like 3 PUBG events. And I'm not going to lie, I felt like a fish out of water at every single one of them. And at Moonduck, we considered doing Overwatch as like a game that we would expand into. And all of us kind of looked at each other and said, does anybody actually like this game? Does anybody want to do content for this game? Like, I know we'll all do it if we get paid, but all things equal, what do you want to do with your time? Nobody wanted to do Overwatch. So like, all right, this is a sign that like we probably shouldn't do this. This is going to feel really forced. Even if we get gigs, it's not going to be our kind of thing. So for me, it was like all StarCraft, then kind of all Han, and then Han and Dota had some overlap, so there was like a little transition there. Then it was all Dota for like almost a decade, not quite, I guess like 8.5 years, and now I'm pretty much all Axie. There was a little transition there. I finished that last DPC season and was like learning Axie and getting caught up, so I was maybe like 2/3 Dota, 1/3 Axie for that last like 6-week sprint.
Right.
But now I barely keep up with Axie, man. There's so many content creators. There's so much going on. There's just so much to build. It's like I can't focus on Dota at all. You know, I read some of the headlines and I get little bits here and there, and I still follow a bunch of people, so it creeps into my Twitter feed. But I find it hard to focus on a lot of games, man. How do you do it?
It's tough for sure. While I've been doing esports in several different games, I've also been. I just graduated from university. I think that's our main topic for today. 5 years. So it's a long road. In university, and I got my bachelor's degree in social services. And I've also been doing music on the side as well. We released an album last year in Spotify and other respectful streaming platforms as well.
Respectable streaming platforms.
Yeah, that's what they always say about YouTube, right?
I love it.
No sellout.
So it's wild to me too that so for you to do a bachelor's, you had to write a thesis. I have a bachelor's. I didn't have to write no freaking thesis.
Really?
But mine's in entrepreneurship. So maybe that's like, you know, hippy dippy enough. Like I had a couple innovation courses, you know, emerging enterprises. Pretty challenging stuff. You know, they're enterprises that emerge, dude. What else do you need to know? It's in the title. If you read the title, you read the book. That's
It's very different for sure. Like for us in social services, it's really important that you have a thesis to show what you've learned and how can you maybe use those skills not only in just academic work or writing, but both into work that you might be going into. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer that I want to connect my thesis with the esports work I've done before and try to find a link, because like the main point of social services is it's educational, and it has something to do with the growth of kids and turning into adults, and you know, a learning experience throughout your life. So how do you connect esports, which is really competitive stuff, combined with growing and the environment and all that, because it's completely different. The other one has a goal, the other one doesn't. The other one's just, you know, raising you as a person.
right. Are you, so now that you're done school, you're planning on going full-time esports / already have?
I am, yeah.
That's the gig. Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm curious, so do you think you're going to apply your degree, generally speaking, to your work? Or, because like I wasn't sure, I was computer science, and then I switched to business. And I've obviously run a bunch of businesses, so my degree ended up being a pretty good fit for my path. And I felt like I kind of stumbled into that trajectory. You look back and go, wow, you really planned that out. And it wasn't really like that in the moment. How about you? Is this like, are you trying to do like combine? What is the actual title again? I know you said it and I already forgot. Of your degree?
The title for the thesis was Young Adults' Experiences on Toxic Behavior and Forming Social Bonds Through Video Games.
I see. And what's the title of the bachelor's degree?
The bachelor's degree, Bachelor of Social Services.
Social services, that was it. I got you.
Yeah, social services, yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, hit me with it, dude. Give me like the high level of the research and, you know, what you were looking at and what... I mean, were there stunning conclusions? Are we about to have our minds blown about toxicity in gaming? And it is interesting because I have like most of us have probably seen that Netflix documentary that was popular, 6 months ago or a year ago. I'm forgetting the name of it, but you know which one I'm talking about. How the social dilemma, I think it was called. How social media is terrible, and especially like Instagram for, I think, like preteen and teenage girls. There's a bunch of data to indicate that it's like objectively bad for self-image, and it's just a spectrum of degree in terms of how destructive it is. So I don't know. It seems pretty relevant, and like many things are gamified now, right? If you take the broadest definition of what a gamer is, it really encompasses a lot of people. And in more and more cultures, gaming isn't this like male-only gender situation. We do still see that in like esports and the hyper-competitive stuff, but for gamers at large, there's like a game that appeals to virtually every demographic now. So gaming has just become a part of modern life, especially now that they exist on mobile phones, right? And parents as well, you know, moms, dads, that kind of stuff. Like anybody with free time and a phone now has access to be a gamer. So, yeah, I'm quite curious to hear about it.
We got a lot of things about this. I think some of the groundwork, which is most important for me to bring out here. I'm not an academic person. Like, I might seem smart. I might make myself look very smart. I try to be smart because I want to, you know, learn, increase my knowledge bank, be more aware about things, respect perspectives, learn from other people, and also try to be, you know, professional about what I say, what I want to bring out, and hopefully get some opinions from people. So when it comes to this whole topic with the thesis, for one person, talking about toxicity might be that I'm not surprised about the findings. For someone, it might be, wow, that is completely different than what I expected. So I think this is what it does some groundbreaking things. Maybe a couple things might seem radical, but I have a huge amount of responses. We gathered 656 responses, and this was open for a month on my social media channels, and also through my partner, which was the youth. I don't actually even know the actual word for it, but basically like the whole youth program in the city of Hyvinkää, which is where I'm living at. So in consensus, for a month we picked up answers from 18 to 29 years of age, and we had a Google Forms inquiry, so anybody could answer to it. And we had about 8 to 9 questions about how many hours do you spend per day, encountering about toxicity. Do you cause toxicity, or do you see toxicity being caused to other people, and you've observed this happen to other people, and also towards you as well. And outside of that, we had a second area, which was basically, do you belong to a gaming group? And do you belong to a gaming community, which are two different things. You have like a group of friends or a group you think you belong to, and then you have a community, which might be like, say, Dota 2 Finland or Axie Infinity Philippines or something. You know, like, do you feel like you belong to a specific game community? And the last one was, do you form friendships and do you form relationships through video games? So we had a total of 7 important questions. The 2 others were about your gender, or if you're a non-binary or gender fluid. I'm not perfect with the terms here in English, so I'll try to be respectful to anybody, of course. And
so this was all in Finnish, or was
this was all in Finnish. So.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So I did write an English abstract for it, which was a requirement for it. And, I could read it from word to word. And I'm like, do you want to hear? Because in the abstract, we have like the main points, but I could also break them down to you by like one segment after the other. Like, I'm totally open to go through this any way you want to. I worked on this for 9 months.
I see. Yeah, no, I think like summary is good, right? So we can maybe kind of go point by point on a high level. So I certainly trust your judgment of like what you think are like the most interesting and relevant points, especially to gaming. I think that's the part that like I'm particularly interested in. And it's like, I guess I don't know as much about Finnish culture, but I guess maybe I have some in my head like illusions. Like, you guys seem pretty nice, but I don't know, maybe you're pretty mean to each other in video games. Anecdotally, most Finnish people in Dota I've played with have been normal / nice. You know, it's like a neutral or nice spectrum. I haven't had too many like call me super mega insults or something, but you know, maybe it's different in your language. I was thinking as you were saying that in my head, like I can only imagine how many genders you guys have in Finland. It seems like you guys have one of those languages where from a non-speaker, it seems very intimidating. There's a lot of scary characters and a lot of very long words.
Yeah, true.
So anyway, yeah. So what do we got? What do you think? What's our first major point? I'm very curious here.
So if I read you through from this abstract, there's a couple sentences. There's going to be a lot of things. So I think this is the most important part if anybody is in the audience interested about. So I'm going to read it straight through. It's just going to be a couple sentences. The results show that the experiences of young adults facing toxicity were very alike. Younger ages would experience more toxicity, but were also impacted with worse behavior. The increase of hours played per day also increased the occurrence of toxicity. Women faced more toxic behavior than men and were also less prone to cause such behavior. Young adults are largely the age bracket belonging to a community or gaming group, and women also create more relationships through online games. So that's a handful.
Okay. No, that is a
lot,
lot, but that is super interesting. And if I can try to repeat some of that back in my sleep deprived and then overslept state. So the more you play, the more toxicity you're exposed to. That's like a great baseline starting point. Super straightforward, and I think not a very surprising result. And it sounds like that last point was interesting. So you said women are more susceptible to toxicity, but they are less susceptible to causing toxicity, which is interesting on a scale of self-admittance. So you're saying that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but that data could be interpreted like more men cause toxicity than women do in terms of self-admitting. Like filling out an anonymous form, more men were like, yeah, sometimes I'm a toxic piece of shit. Like more dudes said that than women did.
Yeah. So with the questions specifically for that, we had three groups. We had men, women, and then we had a basically non-determined gender or other gender. So when you look at the numbers of them causing toxicity to others, the percentages pretty much talk for themselves. So we're talking about 4 different options to answer. Yes, often. Yes, sometimes. Rarely, and never. And the never percent for women is 63.6. That's over half of women say they never are toxic to others. 31% say sometimes or seldom, and 4.5 say yes, sometimes. There was not a single answer that said often. For men, often was 6%. Sometimes 31%. Seldom 46%, and never, compare this with the 63% from women, 16.9%. So there's a huge difference.
Wow. And what percentage of, so like you had like 650 responses, what percentage were the non-binary category?
That was, give me a second so I can give you the accurate number for it. So I think we had 1.5% of total answers.
Okay.
So I think we're talking about 15 to 20 out of the 656. And we also had 0.9% who did not want to specify their gender. So obviously those answers have been left out from those diagrams.
Okay. So that like 1.5% though of the non-binary, is there any correlation on that spectrum? Like where do they scale on the like causing toxicity side relative to men and women? Was there any?
Well, there were only 2 answers. So they had... Okay. Oh, because the margins were so small, because of the intake number was very very unreliable. But we had 44% say never and 55.6% say seldom.
Gotcha.
So there was no often or less frequently answers from them at all. But so we couldn't take those into some of the cross tabulation stuff, which we went through later on.
Understood. Okay. Wow, that is that's something. That I feel like when I hear that statistic and think about it for a minute, I start to understand that idea of different communities based on like different groups of people and demographics. Like, I don't know, you can call them safe spaces, I guess, if you want, even though that term feels like kind of charged for some reason, even though it kind of shouldn't be. But, this like group of a women's only tournament or like a women's only community, like I kind of get it, like in some ways gated communities feel a little backwards, but in other ways it feels like still relevant to the reality that we're living in right now. Is that a fair way to say it?
I guess you could put it that way, yeah. Since when you're talking about the numbers that show up in this thesis, this is obviously for the Finnish population, but you can reflect it to the international view of not exactly the same numbers. Obviously, you put 500 people from the UK, they might see it a bit differently. 500 people from Germany might see it a bit differently, but you can see that they correlate together. Like, they obviously notice that toxicity is a big problem. I think that's like the main point. That it occurs in different age groups more than it does less occurs. So that, I think, is a worrying factor as a whole. And I actually, sorry I took the privilege, but I actually linked the numbers chain, which I translated into English. I posted it into your chat. So if somebody wants to look at straight numbers while we talk this through. So I think the one big thing, men and women facing toxicity at staggering numbers. Men, 96% of men face toxicity. For women, 89.9%. So even if women are causing less toxicity than what men do, men still face much more hostile environments than women do in terms of a couple percentage difference. But still, like over 90% on both. It is... it's
I guess
a terrible number.
Makes sense in some degree because like gaming is still skewed in terms of more men than women. Like, it's not 50-50 quite yet. Certainly not in the more competitive communities that this data probably has a little bit of a skew towards, since it's, your audience and you've covered so many different competitive games. So you always have to factor in the kind of sampling that went into consideration here. But dudes being mean to dudes. And it's like misery loves company. Somebody posted that the other day on Twitter. And I thought, man, that is a really articulate way to express like a pretty heavy concept. Like it really is true. And I've been there in like Dota, and I think a lot of other people have been there in other sorts of competitive games where it's a zero-sum kind of thing. And you're playing with 4 strangers and you've lost 4 games in a row. Even if you're not like overtly toxic, you're probably still a little less positive than you would be otherwise, right? Let's put it that way. It's a thing. Competitive games are competitive for a reason, and if it didn't feel bad to lose, then it wouldn't feel good to win, and that's a big dynamic of what makes it worth playing. So I guess it kind of like points. All of this points vectors towards that big question of how do we foster these competitive environments that seem very natural to human psychology, but maybe try to remove some layers of like toxicity while admitting that it at least for now is a little bit innate in competition. It doesn't have to be overtly toxic, but it is, it is still hard. We still see bad sportsmanship all the time on the professional sports level. Across the board, right? It's not even just isolated to a single sport or a single country or a single culture. It's still part of the human dynamic at large. So I think it's a fascinating thing to kind of deconstruct. I don't know, have you heard of this book, Sapiens? A Brief History of Humankind. It's been highly recommended to me. I'm on like page 10. I've been reading it very slowly, but a lot of people have told me it talks about this kind of stuff of like, why are we the way that we are when you talk about kind of humans in aggregate and these kind of trends that cross cultures. And it's weird that both gaming and toxicity and competition are all things that are pretty innate to the human dynamic, right? Toxicity, both in how we interact with each other and how we imbibe intoxicants. That's also something that most cultures engage with. Funny enough,
it's true. It's true. Yeah, and when it comes to games as a whole, some of the theory basis that I used for my thesis, I think this was the hardest part of the thesis, was to connect the theory with the toxicity. Do we have a direct link, or am I basically just sidelining it? But a very good point that was risen up from a book, which is like a gaming educator's handbook or something like, like a tutorial basically. With you can give it to like a parent, you can give it to a kid. They have like a lot of pictures and stuff, and it describes you all the aspects of gaming, about how different genders see it, what does it give, the positives, the cons, and the pros, all that kind of stuff. Like we all know video games increases your capability of learning languages, using languages. It creates your fine motoric skills, for example, your reaction skills, the ways that you're like if you think about physical attributes, your fingers, for example, like it creates nimbleness and all that. So when it comes to toxicity, I think there was one really good point. I'm struggling to translate this into English, but for several years, like toxicity has already been researched, and they've been trying to find causes for it and find reasoning behind it. And I think the big thing usually is that it's so deep, the toxicity and the hate culture, that it's normal to act toxic to another person, and people see it as a normal thing. Like, yeah, it just is. And it feels like it's so easy to act behind a nickname, a online insignia, some kind of anonymous, profile. Basically, they don't know who you really are, and when you're missing that interaction where you're interacting with the way you perform, like you can see me through camera, but if you don't have the camera at all, you just hear the voice or you just see the text, it's so easy to misinterpret and also escalate things.
It's like the ultimate question, I guess it's sort of in the cryptoverse and just in general, is like, how do we make an anonymous Sybil resistant system? And I don't know if that's a terminology you're familiar with, but like Sybil resistance refers to this idea of one human, one account. So like think about Warcraft 3. You make an account, you lose 4 games. Fuck it, I'm just going to make a new one. Now I'm T-Panda number 3, And you go and you start fresh. That's like an example of something that is not Sybil resistant, where one person can have as many accounts as they want, and you can just keep making, like Gmail, right? You can just keep making as many as you want. And right now, our only really effective forms of that kind of technology are like highly centralized organizations where like you have to give them your ID and your social security number, and it all gets reported to the government, and it's all, like gambling and that kind of stuff, right? So it's Sybil resistant, poker stars and that kind of stuff. It's like one user, one account, and they're super strict about it, but you have to sacrifice your privacy and give your data to a trusted, air quotes, third party, right? So that's like $1 billion question. How do we make a system that's Sybil resistant, where it's one human, one account, and we can kind of like verify that somehow in like a trustless system that's decentralized and doesn't require you to give up your like social security number? That's I don't know. That's like a crazy thing. And if somebody does crack the code on that, it might actually start to have a real like global social impact on toxicity, but then it gets scary of like abuse in terms of like it's like a social credit score or something, when it's always. I mean, that's serious though, dude. I mean, we're starting to see that in China a little bit. That highly centralized, like,
there's been some talk about it.
Yeah, that like Black Mirror episode is like kind of cheesy, but also kind of. I don't know. I think it's like 40% realistic, something like that. It's pretty dystopian. So anyway, we're like talking about really big stuff here, and it's like we evolved through competition and by bashing animals and stuff. And I think a lot of this has to do with like we got old hardware and brand new software up here, and sometimes the hardware and the software don't always get along.
It's true. And when it as a whole and as a perspective from games as well, I feel like the more there is toxicity, I feel like it's just going to get worse and worse, and it's even going to reflect outside of games. It's going to start impacting your life, your workplace, your social experience with people, the way you interact with people. Like if it takes a grasp of you, you are more highly going to be reflecting it to other people too. It changes you, and it changes you in the wrong, negative way. So when it comes to like I'm working currently in a with the partner technically as a gaming educator. So we have kids from ages 9 to 18 or 19, and we play video games with them. That's my work. I play games with kids. But every time they cuss, every time they say the
Tough
N
stuff.
word, every time they go anything, like
Jesus.
over the board, I intervene, and I want to create them a safe space to play video games and enjoy, find the positives about it. If you don't like a video game, you don't like it, but you don't have to drag everybody with you, you know.
No, totally. That's
So preemptive work is really important when it comes to toxicity and recognizing it. What can we do about it? Are there any
yeah.
tools? Is there anything we can do to prevent this from happening or getting worse?
Positive reinforcement is big.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And denying video games and demonizing video games is not the way to advance, because that's only just going to create more fear, more harm, and make video games this big devil. Kind of like what rock music was for Christianity 10 years ago, for example. It was thought as this is the devil's work and all that stuff. But in the end, it's just a way of art. It's a way of expressing
Yeah.
yourself. And some people drew it off. Of course, there's always somebody who's going to draw it all overboard. But as a general idea,
Yes. Overall,
It's
games
fine.
at large. No, I agree. However, this is like a sad reality and something that I think you can empathize with, and probably a number of people listening right now. Not playing Dota anymore and not chasing the cognitive dissonance of MMR, it has really made me like a less stressed, happier person, where I realize like now I'm busier than I've ever been before, but I feel like I have way more bandwidth to process that busyness because it has all of my focus. And like I play Axie a little bit and it is fun, but like I think the nature of 1v1 esports, it's like it's just a little bit less toxic because in general, it's you. There's nobody to blame but yourself. And yes, that can be frustrating. And yes, cognitive dissonance is real and ladder anxiety is real and all that stuff. But it's a different dynamic than solo queue in Dota 2, where you're talking to 4 strangers on voice and you're like, I should be 5K MMR. I'm 3,500. It can be a slow grind, but I should be making progress. And then 6 months later, you're like, I'm 3,300. What the fuck is going on? And like that, just as much as you try to push it down and realize I'm being irrational about a video game, when I'm a full-time Dota caster, it's like, yeah, but this is your job, bitch. So you should like, I remember PPD tweeting like, come on, if you're really serious, it's time to giddy up and like, it's not that hard to hit 5K. And I actually truly believe that. And that one tweet from PPD actually fucked me up for years. And it's because like what he was saying was completely true, and it led to that like realization of like I'm actually like pretty dog shit at this game. Like I'm really trying almost as hard as I can, and I'm really struggling to make progress here. And that like is a very frustrating experience. And like I love Dota and it's an amazing game, but there were a lot of hours spent bashing my head against the wall, just like I'm playing Dota,
Yeah.
I'm learning mechanics, and it's like I don't know if I really was. I might have just been wasting my time chasing a stupid MMR dream that was trickling into the rest of my life and just making me in general a more toxic person, right? Conversations just being a little bit more short with people than you would otherwise, or whatever else, or also passing it on in future Dota games. Even if you're not intentionally feeding, picking position 4 treant protector and just sitting in the trees and buffing up towers and refusing to do anything is like, going Radiant's first item and then just pushing waves. And you're like, you're not really, you're just picking techies. You're playing 1v10 or 1v9 rather. And it's like, that can be fun, but it is like, I think almost by definition, like a toxic experience, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like you are no longer you. And I think also another one, which is also like chasing a dream can become addiction.
That's true. That's definitely true. It's
I
hard
try to
balance,
avoid,
though.
yeah,
That's,
I try to avoid using the word addiction because it has this negative sound to it. But I feel like for a lot of people, playing video games can still be the best thing that they've ever done in their entire life. It might be the only thing that still keeps them sane. So when I go back to the whole topic of demonizing and taking games away from someone, that might just be the last positive thing that person has left in their life. There's a lot of people who are in alienation risk, and video games are still keeping them in the cycle, in the flow, as a part of our society. So if if you start denying things like that, you're going to make things worse.
Yeah, I tweeted about that the other day of how important video games are as an escape. Like if you live in a developing country or somebody where, or a place where things are very hard economically, or your family doesn't have enough money for food, you don't have enough money for like entertainment or escapes from reality. So all you know, the idea of a game where you can earn that has strategy to it and all this kind. Sorry, I'm pitching Axie now. It is like, it's really powerful though. It's not just the earning. It's like that escape is part of the value proposition. And when you feel like there's real stakes on the line of like my earnings potential is tied to like how well I perform, that sense of purpose is really powerful. It's not just about the money. It's about like having like something that you can do, that you can provide with. Like that's a really powerful part of the human element, like having a sense of purpose. And if you don't have that, fuck man, I can see why you're toxic. I probably would be too. Those are like, I think some of the darkest moments in my history are those when I felt like I didn't have a sense of purpose and I didn't know like what I was, until I found esports, until I had something I could really sink into. And I mean, speaking of addiction, I can tell you casting's fucking addictive. I see why there's a whole group of people out there that are in like, you know, so far in their career, they're like a forever aspiring caster type. You know, this was the big shot this DPC season. There's all these new faces, and they didn't make the cut, and they've been on the grind for a long time. Some of those people, like, I get it. I see what they're chasing because I did the same thing for a lot of years, man. I hung in there partially because it's worth it to make 30 grand this year because I want the high of, you know, being able to tell that live story to an audience in front of 100,000 people and a couple thousand in a stadium. You know, that first time I walked into a stadium and it was mostly full of people and it was like a hype match and Trent and I are sitting there talking about the draft and like you hear yourself on the loudspeaker, that's a dopamine hit stronger than most drugs I've taken. You know, like that's a real serious like adrenaline high that it's first time I was shaking and I couldn't breathe. I was so nervous. And by the time the game was over, I remember stumbling to walk down the stairs and I was just like, I was like this. I was like, Trent, that was so fucking amazing. I was like stuttering, dude. It was so overwhelmingly awesome that my brain like couldn't process it. And I mean, maybe that sounds a little hyperbolic, but that's actually what that experience was like for me the first time. And that's, you know, it's like the first time you get really stoned and then you never have that experience again and you try to chase that and it just never happens. It's just like that. It's never like the first time again. You know, the second time in the stadium, you're not nearly as nervous. You're like, all right, I got this. You know, I've done this before. You've been here. There's nothing to worry about. You're going to slay it. But that first time when there's a high risk of failure and you've never done it before and you don't know that you're going to make it. And then you do, you know, you slay it. You do the cast and it's great energy and it's awesome and the crowd's cheering. Yeah. You make a joke and it lands. Dude. So I get it, man. It's like, I don't know. It's like, is that work or is that fun? Is it both? I don't know. But I was totally addicted to that for a lot of my career. It was number one above all else.
I think it's a combination of everything, to be honest. It's like, it's the biggest tool for feeling accepted. Because that's what every human needs, and it's a basic human need, let's put it that way. To be accepted, to be loved by someone. If you feel like an outcast and you're left out completely, you don't have that balance in your life. You need to have someone or something that makes you feel wanted. Mm-hmm. We all want to have that feeling. And I think casting in esports, I've yet to be in front of that big audience. Like 2 years in Los Angeles, we were casting for an empty crowd. We didn't have anybody there because we were not allowed to advertise the event.
That's so funny.
So we didn't have anybody there, just the production crew, just the players. But still, those few times that I've been casting, it's a great feeling when you're doing a team fight. You're building up that hype, and the whole crowd starts to get into it. And you've finished your sentence, and you can still hear the roars, the claps, and everything. Yeah, I can agree. It's a big high. It's a massive big high.
Yeah. And that's a weird thing about, I mean, it's not that dissimilar to the players on the stage as well, right? Like walking out onto that stage, you know, you go up there. I had one of those experiences. I just talked about this on air, I think with Thebe. It might have been at the Creator Cup, like Captain's Draft 4. We did the talent show match, and it was ability draft, and I was playing Dazzle. You know how it's like randomly, you get a random hero? I random Dazzle, and I was sitting on the stage, like, of captain's draft to do the show match and ability draft. You know how crazy that is? That's less than a 1 in 100 chance, man. That's insane. So I was like, that was my moment to shine. All right. And then we get into ability draft, and most of the people on the stage have no idea what's going on with ability draft. Purge was the only one that was really good at it, except for Jack, and Jack was on the other team. He ended up carrying hard with OD, but I played a position 1 Dazzle where I got Bloodthirst, I got Dazzle Poison, I might have gotten Dazzle's ult, and then I grabbed something else. And so Bloodthirst is broken in ability draft, especially on a ranged hero. So I'm just running around, I'm smacking people. I destroyed the offlaner. I was 12-2 or something on the stage in front of an audience on the live stream, carrying the team, making the calls, getting kills, hearing Purge call my name over the loudspeaker. Zyori with the triple kill. It was, and I was playing, you got to understand, Dazzle is dude, he's my spirit animal. That's my hero. I have 600 games played with Dazzle. My next highest is Witch Doctor at 150. I got a Dazzle print on my walls hanging somewhere. Dude, Dazzle's where it's at. So that was just a moment where it felt like the stars aligned and the spotlight was on me. And we did end up losing the game, but it was still super epic and super amazing. And fuck, dude, I see why pro players want more of that feeling, you know? When you win that game and you come out of that booth and that whole crowd is you're the fucking man. Fucking you. Dude, that's a feeling worth chasing. And that's part of the competition, right? That's caked into, even if you're not thinking about it consciously, that that dopamine hit is coming if you win. The crowd response is bundled into the competitive experience. It's not just about that, but it's absolutely an element, it's human thing. It's a tribal community kind of feeling.
And to feel that feeling is basically a combination of the determination for you to get to that point, the willpower that you will make it through, and the hard work that you basically put into it. And that involves both pros and cons that will weigh a toll on your mental health. It might even be on your physical health. If you don't have a good balance, if you don't have a good physical balance, you will not have a good mental balance. You need to have them both. It's like a yin and yang kind of thing.
Totally.
For the better. It doesn't always apply to every single person, but for 95% of people, I can tell you need to have both things in balance.
Okay.
To succeed and to push yourself forward.
So get the blood flowing. So one of the other stats that I wanted to ask you on, this one's interesting. You said just over a third of women form relationships through games. The percentage of men that form relationships through games is below 1/10. So what is that? It's 9% versus 35% or something like that. That's a pretty wide gap. So that's a very interesting, and I always like these things too. And I'm looking at this tweet and I'm laughing because this person that responded to you, Nathan, out of interest, why split toxicity into men and women? Do you do that for each question? ? And it's dude, it's just a normal data point that you ask people, and it's it's not binary anymore, but it's
it's a fair question.
But I see where they're coming from, but the framing is very negative. But I laugh because I do a kind of a line with these things where I go, am I a man or a woman? I know I would check man. Well, actually, of the three, I would probably check the non-binary one on this. But for a lot of things, I don't know, I'm a dude in a dress. I don't really identify as a woman in that regard. That's why I wouldn't call myself transgender, because I don't really feel trapped in my body. I feel I'm okay with my body as a dude, and I just like wearing cute girly stuff. So I certainly feel on some spectrum of girly, but I don't feel a strong desire to it doesn't overwhelm me to feel I'm a dude, that identity doesn't bug me. But I do think with this stuff, I wonder which side I identify with more. And I definitely identify with the woman side of this, I think, based on these data points of almost all of my relationships have been formed through games. Even before I was working in esports, when I was in college, when I was starting my freshman year, I met a girl in my World of Warcraft guild who lived in Florida. I lived in New Jersey, and we met when she visited New Jersey one time. We hit it off, whatever, and she ended up moving to New Jersey, and we lived together for 2 years. It was a great relationship, a whole thing, whatever. She ended up going back to Florida to be near family. It was a pretty cool thing, but that was completely forged through World of Warcraft, straight up.
Yeah.
remote, like long distance relationship to living together kind of experience. So it's a little bit interesting to me that like that there's so many men in gaming. It just seems like a great opportunity for lonely people to connect. Yet less than 10% of dudes actually form strong relationships. That actually really stands out to me. I find that I would almost use the word staggering. Is that hyperbolic?
I mean, guess you could. That's what we brought up in the statistics. Do you know something called the chi-square test?
No.
So this is a mathematical equation that we use when we want to show a relationship between two categorical variables. So with the chi-square, we could basically put a combination of who answered yes and who answered no. Was it a man or was it a woman? We did not use non-binaries for this because of the earlier mentioned low number statistics, so we couldn't get anything reliable out of it. So when we did this chi-square test, basically we had men and women and yes and no, and when we put those together to compare, we were like, so basically out of 88 answers, 58 say no, but 30 said yes. And for men, 33 said yes, but 514 said no. So there's got to be something over here. Like over a third of women have said yes. So what's up with this? And when we did that cross tabulation, we figured out that 1/3 of women, actually over a third of women, I think it's like 35% of women have formed relationships. But I had a typo in the Finnish version. So in the abstract, I wrote it correctly that over a third of women have formed relationships through games. I wrote into the results that a third of women have created relationships with men, which is inaccurate because we did not measure with whom they created those relationships.
I see.
It's just relationships in general. It might be a lesbian relationship, for example, or with a non-binary, for example. But over a third for women. And for men, it was a very small number. There's a possibility that all of these answers could be a couple answering yes in both. So the man and the woman, or the man and the man, or the woman and the woman, and and so forth.
Right.
Could have been the ones answering to it, but it's still 88 answers. So that's still quite a big number. And for that to apply every single time that it is a couple answering this question is a statistical question mark in a sense. So it shouldn't be possible. It could be possible, but we didn't believe it would be so.
I see.
Because we've had answers from feminist influencers who I contacted. It's like, we need some women answers. Can you help me out with this? Like, sure, we can. And we also got some non-binaries through them. So we had several influencers bringing me answers from separate areas. It's not just one place where you're like, post in your polls,
Right, yeah. You try to get as much like diversity in the responses as you can.
Yeah.
So, but of the 656 responses, not everybody answers every question, right? Is that what you're saying? So
There's a third answer, which is I don't know. So we left those out.
Okay, that too. I don't know.
It is not mentioned here because we still had the majority answer to the questions, except when it came to relationships, or was it? I'm not sure which one was it. Was it the relationship friendships? The men's answer pool is like 550 or so. For one question, we only had 510. So I was like, there's got to be like 40 men who don't realize what a friendship or a relationship is, because you either are in one or you're not, and you should recognize it, but they were saying we don't know. So it was kind of like, should we bring this up? Like, okay, maybe we'll just leave it out because there might be something, this would be a place for a qualitative research that somebody could make on the basis, like, why do we have so many men who don't know? Do they have a friendship or a relationship they've created for video games? Or maybe it's still being built. Who knows?
So is there any spot here, or maybe an addendum, like a layer on top of this, postulated at all about what the fix here, or like how do we cut this toxicity thing root and stem? How do we start chipping away at the core issue? Like I see you wrote here, users who have been targeted by toxicity also cause toxic behavior towards others, which says to me, what's the key to breaking the cycle? That's like the only, and there's a lot of things like, like cities that are stuck with a lot of poverty, and it's sort of this like generational where people are born into poverty, and it's like, how do you fix that from like a city perspective where you have these dense group of people that are all without means, and like, you know, just throwing money at it isn't like a valid solution. It's like an infrastructure problem, it's like a crime problem, it's really complicated, right?
Yeah.
It's like access to food, access to education, all this sort of stuff. So breaking cycles can be really hard. So how do we break the cycle, bruh? How do we do this thing?
Oh. Well, I wish it was that simple, Zyori.
Yeah, I know. Dude, just tell me the code. I'll type it into my, what's that thing in the Da Vinci Code, the Codex or whatever. And, you know, we'll do it up. Smaller communities, is that the answer? Do we, like one nation? do we get rid of the global lines? You burn your passport? And do we start a commune in Iceland? I mean, like, what do we do here, dude?
That's the thing. Like the main reason for me to make this inquiry and this research was because I wanted to innovate people to come up and figure out possible quantitative reasoning behind things, so we can get a more collective database on things, and maybe we can find more similarities between either age groups. Like, can we already impact it when we have like young people, say ages 12, 13? Because I, for example, have noticed something. When we went to school, saying a cuss word was very rare, and something that we did not dare to use because someone would tell the teacher I said a bad word. In today's world, I run into an 8 or 9-year-old in the bus, and they're just going fuck, fuck, fuckity, fuck, fuck, and I'm like, whoa! Like, I just turn and look at them for like, where did they learn this language? Then I start to figure out,
YouTube.
Are we the people actually causing it? Are we the people of 20 to 30 to 40 years old who have gone over the feeling, the threat that nobody's going to judge us anymore for using foul language, and don't think about the consequences of using that foul language? That's the culture we live in today. People adapt. Young people learn from what you do. You are leading an example.
Yeah.
And so I myself, I am at fault. We are all at fault for using bad language. And kids learn from us because they think we are idols. We're the ones to look up to. And if we going F's and N's and S's and whatever we want to use, they will learn, and they will use those words.
The older I've gotten, the more I've really appreciated the power being wielded. Like, I think there's this very natural... I could write a blog about this. There's this arc that happens when you're... especially a commentator, but like an influencer in general, where you start to come up and you're like, all right, I got 100 followers. I'm doing something. I got 1,000 followers. All right, I'm actually really onto something, right? And then you start coming up with ways to try to crack the code. You navigate up, and you start getting these first little tiny opportunities, these like micro influencer opportunities of either affiliate stuff or like, hey, we'll pay you $50 to do like 10 tweets or something. And it's awesome. At that time, you're like, yo, any money is like proof of concept that I'm really doing something. This is great. So you keep climbing that ladder, and then eventually you get to this point where you start getting offers that are kind of too good to pass up. And some of them are better than others. And in the case of Dota, it's like the really tempted fruit is like the betting stuff. And at the beginning, you don't really know your value. And then eventually, like, you get got, or somebody explains to you like, hey, you should add a 0 to this. And I'm victim of that. Some of the first sponsorships I ever sold on my podcast, they were like betting sponsors. They have so much money. You're so pristine. It's so hard for them to get like customized advertising. And you start doing this like over the top sellout stuff because you're so grateful that they took a chance on you and this whole thing. And the reality is, yeah, they took a chance on you, but that's because it was a calculated decision. And like, you doing this is them winning. So you don't really have to overthink them. Just do the thing you're supposed to do it well, and that's it. Anything extra, you should be charging extra for. And that's like what you escalate to. And then after a while, you start getting enough offers and enough money that you get picky, and you go, which of these are actually worth it, you know? And when I looked back, and I wrote in my resume, in like my cover letter, in the last 5 years, I've sold $750,000 in sponsorships across whatever number of events. And a lot of that included Valve money. But the second category, actually, number one category, even above Valve money, was betting dollars. And it's like, of that $750K, over 50% was from betting companies that I relentlessly shilled, you know, because like they were paying the bills. They were literally making our tournaments possible. They were allowing us to pay commentators to be full-time Dota casters.
Right.
So when I thought about the ethics of it, in any given situation, it's like this event is still a net positive in terms of growing the company, getting these 10 people paid that are otherwise struggling as commentators. As an agent, I'm doing my job by enabling this money to flow like directly to them through this event. But at the end of the day, I'm the guy on camera that's like, hello there, not children. Have you considered placing a bet? X companies got your back. Ew. And I'm, it's like I'm like fucking Garth from Wayne's World. I'm wearing the hoodie,
Right.
I'm wearing the hat, I got the pen. I'm like, hey. And I guess I don't know what I regret, right? Because like if Moonduck didn't happen, I think that's a net loss for like just people and like value created, right? But when you think about the ethics of it, and after you look back at like your career 10 years removed, you go, I want to do something that has a way different social impact. And I want to stop advertising, I don't hate gambling. I do some sports betting. I love playing poker, but I think some of the stuff that we did was definitely way over the top and not very mindful of like minors or like positioning. It wasn't until we started working with Betway until we started thinking about that stuff, because they're in the UK and they're really highly regulated. So the messaging had to be really, really specific. And they were like, yo, we can't make it look too cool. And that was the first time we went, the fuck you talking about? You don't want us to make you look cool? Then what are you paying us for? They're like, well, like we want to be positioned as kind of cool, but and with our regulation, we can't do any advertising that like implies you're going to be successful or a better person or better with women. Like you can't joke about any of that stuff. Like you can't imply that you'll be a better person at all as a result of gambling. And you can't imply anything about people winning or like how much money they can make. It all just has to be like, hey, here are the odds. Just do whatever you would do with those odds. That was the kind of stuff that they wanted. Then they wanted logo positioning and that kind of stuff. And that really opened my eyes to like, man, these unregulated betting companies, the stuff they were asking us to do was really, maybe manipulative isn't the right word, but looking back, it's like, God, that advertising doesn't feel good. That was really not, that was not me in my best form. So anyway, that was long and anecdotal. As you can see, I'm still a little torn about it.
That's good to also recognize like work ethic and also like which things have moral issues and how does that project to other people, for example. Like I think that's a great example.
Yeah. So these days I try to really think about that stuff, and I'm in the luxurious position doing esports at Axie. Like, I love the game and the ecosystem and all that stuff, but the fact that we have the funding to do esports without sponsors is like, I can just kind of dream big and build the best system based on whatever parameters we want, and we can take on any sponsors or partners that make sense or are strategic for us, but we are not beholden to sponsors at all. And on the third party, like Moonduck tournament side, it was the opposite. We literally could not do a tournament until we had a title sponsor signed on. And I would say 9 times out of 10, the only people that could afford to be a title sponsor and be flexible around the dates and stuff were betting companies. So
it's like don't let your dreams be memes, but you can't really afford it,
Yeah, exactly. It's weird. Startup world gets weird. So I just try to think about all that stuff, and you want to go about life as ethically as possible, but it is harder when
it's hard.
You're looking at your net income at the end of the year, and it's like, okay, I have $25K so far in like net income, and it's October. If we do this event, I'll make $10,000 and be at $35K for the year. You're like, is that greedy? And you're looking around at all these other people and how much money they're making and all these other influencers and even people at events that are like, I was never true tier 1 Dota talent. The people that are like real like Dota talent, 30K for the year is like laughable. They make much more than that. So those kind of situations, it is really hard. You're like, do I want to be able to buy Christmas presents for my family this year? Am I okay to do a couple of reads for this betting company? And
guilty.
Yeah, guilty, dude. Exactly. So it is like a good PSA to think about. And
It is.
Like even the sniff event for me was like an eye opener to appreciating. I had like no viewers back then. So you just don't appreciate the potential power of the machine, like what we have right now. If I just stand up and walk away and forget to turn this thing off, like there's a lot of power in what we're doing, and like putting a camera in your bedroom that you turn on and off sometimes. There's a little responsibility there. You can't just get fucked up and forget to turn it off. That's a big deal. And I didn't respect that like to that degree back then. And boy, did I learn a quick lesson. That podcast we were doing that morning had like maybe 15 max concurrents. I'm surprised anybody was even watching the stream like an hour later after, I had left it streaming just an empty desk chair.
Yeah.
That's
sounds familiar to me as well. Kind of feels like my life at this point. I'm living the young Zyori life, kind of. But it's also true. Like
life.
it's like when you think about the way you can impact on your potential way of showing to others your own behavior and all that. So if we jump back to like some of the thesis points, I think you asked about, is there any particular answer to toxicity and can we purge it?
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to look more accurately at things called the Pearson correlation coefficient and the Spearman's rank correlation coefficient.
Oh, Pearson and Spearman, dude, of course.
Yeah. So those we also used. We wanted to compare with like the age group and then the toxicity questions of, have you faced toxicity, have you been targeted by toxicity, and have you caused toxicity, which were the three main groups. And that's where we brought up with the numbers for the younger people being more toxic than others. We wanted to create 3 different age groups from the 18 to 29, and we saw that the rarely or seldom number went up the older the answer was. So like groups 22 to 25 and 26 to 29, the numbers increased. And same for women. The women's numbers increased as well by a huge amount. And the 18 to 21 age group was the more, well, you could describe more hostile group out of these 3, because we're still talking about a negative a negative topic in a sense. So you could consider it being a hostile age group. But there are reasons for it as well. When you were a kid, obviously you learned about things. We've talked about cussing and learning from our elders and all that. Mm-hmm. You're still a growing up person. Your brain is still developing. You're still sucking up this massive amount of information. You have this pressure from your parents to do this and do that. You need to find a job. You need to find an education. Your friends are getting girlfriends while you're being single. You're being bullied and nobody else is being bullied at school. All that stuff, everybody is an individual. But when we're younger, everything seems more radical. Now that we're like 28 to 30, it feels different.
Yeah. So, all right, for some reason, what you just described triggered like a weird concept for me, because I was thinking, I grew up in a high school like you described, where like if you heard any student say like, I call it a curse word, you say cuss word, but same exact thing, right? A bad word. It's like you would expect them to get detention or something. If you heard a kid say fuck or like something on that level, like the whole room would be like silent, tight butthole, like, yo, shit, that kid just said fuck. Like, he's going to the principal's office. So what was that kept us in line? I guess some of it's like cultural. Some of it was like there were 150 kids in my high school graduating class, so pretty small. And I think that helps. Like, it gives the teachers more control. Maybe that's just the culture. It was definitely pretty Christian influence, so maybe just a little less like anti-authoritarian, so people just didn't push the envelope. But for me, I really think it was this fear of the, quote, permanent record. And like, I don't know if that's even a thing, but this idea of like, there's some file that somebody has on me that's like a log of all the shit that I'm doing. And when I'm done with this shitstorm that is high school and I go to college, they're going to hand them my permanent file. And if it says that he's a fuckity fuck in there, they're not going to let me into college. So like in my head, that was like this thing I was always afraid of, but I don't think that really existed in that regard. 'Cause I have another weird anecdote. I got suspended when I was a senior because this is a really weird story, but I had a friend and he had a second cell phone and it was like a cool flip phone and he offered to sell it to me. And I said, okay. And it was suspiciously cheap. And I pop my SIM card in, I'm using it, and the principal comes in and says, hey, that phone you're using was reported stolen. My quote friend stole the phone and then sold it to me. So, of course, the girl reported that it was stolen, saw that I was using it, and then reported it, and the principal was like, well, you have the stolen phone, so you're the one that's responsible for it. And he was like, buyer be... I remember the principal saying to me, buyer beware, and I was just like... I mean, all right, man. Like, I don't really understand what I'm being punished for here. Like, I guess I'm sorry I didn't, like... I asked my friend, and he was like, well, I guess he's not really your friend then. It's like, well, obviously, dog, but I'm just saying, like, why are you have all the power to make any exception you want. What does suspending me for 2 days do here? And he was just like, that's the rules, bud. And that was the moment I realized, like, does any of this matter? This is like the stupidest thing in the world. I'm already going to college. This is like, what the fuck's happening? And that was like a really eye-opening experience for me. So anyway, I digress, but I wonder if others had that experience or if that is just like not a concept that exists anymore. And how did that get instilled in our culture to be even a thing?
True. That's where we're going to a very interesting topic, which I also try to avoid because cultures are so different. It can, and by culture, it can mean age groups. It can mean what life was in the 70s. It might be what life is today. Because I've watched this conversation in Finland, especially in social media, for quite some time. And I would like to ask you, actually, what do you think is Finnish culture? How do you see Finnish culture?
Just in general, like at a high level?
Yeah, like, how would you describe Finnish culture as an outsider's perspective?
All right, so like no joke, just completely honest. I definitely
be honest.
Associate it with Nordic culture in general. I guess I should preface by saying of like Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland, I've been to Sweden like 6 times or something, and I've never been to the other 3 once. So my framing of like Nordic culture is definitely framed around Sweden, though I know that they're, despite many similarities, also quite different. I know unironically saunas are a huge part of your culture. I know you guys love cold water. I know that you guys kind of abide by that general, is it a social democracy? So relatively high taxes. I think you guys have like really happy people and really sad people. Like I think you have some of the happiest people, but you have a really high suicide rate. Some of that probably has to do with depression from the sun moving in and out. You have a pretty good welfare state, I think. So I think people are pretty. I always think about some article I saw where some guy got like government support to go to rock concerts for some like thing that he was doing. He was addicted to metal music or something. So like I I get the sense that you guys are pretty chill. It's pretty cold, and yeah, you can within those bounds, kind of have some fun time. There's probably a good amount of freedom. I think you guys like alcohol. I think you're very like serious in general. Like you're like kind of blunt and have a direct way of communicating, at least in English.
Right. Okay. If you don't mind me stopping you there, I think we got the one thing. Us Finnish people only see us as alcohol. Everything is related to alcohol.
Really?
Is that really Finnish culture? Because everyone's like, yeah, I mean, we drink during Christmas, we drink during New Year's, we have midsummer festivals. Oh, drinking again. We graduate, we go drinking. Weekend, we go drinking. And we're like, is it really just sauna, alcohol, and a democracy? Is that everything we really stand
I do think
for?
of metal music as well.
So there are some things that you brought up that the regular Finnish person does not think about at all. Like,
okay, and I mean, I might have a
because it
warped
feels like it's a
lens.
normal
Who's to say
thing.
that I have the, I might not be the average American who's like never even been to Europe before. I'd be curious what they think.
But it's a great point because it does make us think sometimes that we're very obvious. We have been growing in such a safe environment that we complain about the most silliest things when it comes to like any age group, to be honest. Like we complain about so many ridiculous things because we have things so well here in Finland. Even with high taxes, we still have good social care. We have good health insurance. We have jobs. We have a way for welfare if we don't have a job. Things are so good in Finland in general, but we still complain about the stupidest things. But the discussion on social media is mostly about, like lately what it was, people only really think about just alcohol and sauna. Like, are we really that people that are just alcohol and sauna? Like, that doesn't sound like a culture. That sounds like more like a way of living or an option or something we've learned from our people. Because I did, one more thing I wanted to say. I studied a course during my social studies services, and I wanted to look at alcoholism in Finland. And we go all the way to 1600s when we were making MoonShine.
Wow.
That's basically where we've learned. We used MoonShine as a natural remedy. We used it for a cure for everything. Kind of like the industrialism where people were supposed to drink because alcohol purified all the toxins out of your body, like a basic working man should drink a bottle of rum every day.
There was a huge shift in humans where like we used to drink alcohol all the time, then it got replaced by stimulants with like coffee and tea.
Exactly.
And there was like a huge jump in productivity because we used to think like fermentation was a way to keep things from spoiling, right? So like wasn't that the beginning of beer and wine, was that it kept better than various other things because you could ferment it. So anyway, totally.
You went through prohibition. We went through prohibition as well
Did
in
you
the
really?
30s. Yeah, we had like a 10-year or 20-year like system going on. It didn't last for very long because obviously MoonShine became very popular at the time, and they realized that this is actually more of a problem than actually helpful. And then the government created a monopoly around alcohol. We have one store, which is a big chain around the entire
right, just
Finland.
like Sweden. Yeah. So all right, let me ask you a question. What do you think about Iceland?
What do I think about Iceland?
Iceland, yes.
To be honest, I don't know much about Iceland.
Okay.
A Viking country that still, up to this day, still has some pagan belief in them, which is a bit similar to what we had in Finland in the times. Like we had our own Ukko Jumala.
Dude, what are you doing for Christmas? You want to come party in Iceland with me? You want to have a white Christmas near the Arctic Circle? Because I think that's what I'm going to do.
Doesn't sound too bad, to be honest.
For real.
Doesn't sound too bad, to be honest.
I think I'm going to
never
go
been
from
there.
like December 20th to like January 5th or something like that, give or take.
We went from a very, very serious topic into partying in Iceland. I love it.
Well, you know, I mean, Christmas party. We're going to go up to the Arctic Circle. We're going to eat some reindeer, maybe drink some schnapps. You were talking about alcohol, and it's because I was there earlier in the year in like September, and I was hanging out with a couple of different folks from Iceland, and alcohol did come up several times. And they also had a very similar, like, there's a lot of moonshine, or at least there was. And now I think the alcohol distribution is pretty centralized, and it's pretty expensive. And everyone was joking, but also serious, that like the cheapest alcohol is literally in the airport in the duty free shop. So every time you land, it's like kind of a thing like you should stock up on alcohol there because it's the cheapest spot to stop. I loved it though. I really enjoyed visiting, and it makes me wonder if I would also enjoy Finland. And all of them said I should come back during the darkness and see if I still like it. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to be there on the darkest day of the year, or pretty close to it at least. And we'll see what it's like, dude. Sit in a hot tub, sit in the sauna.
I recommend the northern Finland parts during winter because of the aurora borealis.
Dude, I'm hoping to see it in North Iceland.
The authentic Christmas or the winter feeling is really in the north.
Yeah.
Like, I live in the south, and it's just gray and a bit of snow everywhere. But when you go to the north, you get like the real feel for it.
Well, yeah. So sorry to up the vibe a little bit with Christmas partying, but you know, I got a Christmas sweater. I got an Airbnb, dude. I'm thinking I'm gonna book the tickets today. So I like to do vacations where I book it and then I just let people tack on. So it's one of those it's a no commitment open ticket, bro. You can decide until the day of if you want to come join us. So it would be my pleasure to host you for Christmas, buddy. I would love to make you some reindeer. I got a reindeer recipe that'll bake your fucking noodle, bud.
I will be delighted to. Thanks for the invite. I'll consider it. I'll actually consider it.
That's all I can ask for.
But anyway, we can now draw this subject to causes of toxicity, and I think alcoholism, and alcohol families, the negativities that it has brought to a social environment is one huge problem causing toxicity. And I'm not saying the less alcohol, the better things would be, but it definitely
there's correlation
would be a negative aspect if we had more alcoholist families, for example, and their kids, because they get impacted with a lot of negative stuff and insecurity, and that causes also the toxicity or toxic behavior if you're very insecure.
Okay. Well, there will be no kids in Iceland. I just want to clarify that. But no, I totally. And this like reminds me of gambling because like on a personal level, like I do some sports betting. It's legal in Colorado. I'm in one of the lucky states where I can just do it through apps and stuff on my phone. I love to place, $5 on a football game or a UFC fight, and you're watching it from a totally different lens. I guess in theory I could bet on Dota now as well, since I'm pretty disconnected. Stuff like that I think is fun, but at the same time, like, is legal sports betting like a good thing? What kind of regulations do we need to have on the the ads? It's sort of like cigarettes. Should we give it that same treatment where it can't be advertised in most conventional scenarios? I don't know. I don't know what's fair there and how that goes with like freedoms and stuff. And I see alcohol very similarly, where like I like alcohol, but I also recognize alcoholism is an issue for many people. I feel like I do enjoy the freedom of being able to drink it as a responsible adult, but how do we balance that again with advertising and access? And like, is for example, is high taxes actually an effective way to like reduce alcoholism? Like making it more expensive, does that actually deter people that are the most problematic with it? I don't know. I'm not
that's
so
a bit
sure.
of an issue. I don't think it's a big secret if we tell that we have very high taxes in alcohol in Finland, so everybody goes to Estonia. Because you can literally bring it over the ferry. There's like a limit of alcohol and tobacco that you can bring, but you can buy like a case of beer for 10 euros, which would normally be like 25 euros, 20 or 30 euros in Finland.
Dude, that's
so
so
you're
crazy.
like, hey, I say 15 euros by just taking a ferry to Estonia, which costs like 10 to 20 euros. I bring myself 3 to 5 cases of beer.
When I was in Iceland, I got a drink with somebody, and somebody bumped into her, and she spilled it after she had taken like one sip, and she was just like, "That's $18 that just fell on my lap. Not only is my underwear wet, but I just lit $18 on fire." I was like, "Don't worry, I got you." I definitely picked up that next drink, but that was just a wild, like, every cocktail is a fucking investment, you know? Like, that's,
yeah.
Oh god, and it was like a rum and coke or something, you know? It's not like it was some amazingly insane cocktail. It's like a margarita,
Right.
2 ingredients. So yeah,
But it's true. But it's expensive. It's expensive for sure. That's that's something that.
So
we
does
all
it
know
work
the
though?
countries and
Has that
Switzerland
been
have in common.
Has that been effective in reducing alcoholism in Finland? Your extremely high taxes? Is the
I actually haven't
Estonia
looked at the
loophole
numbers.
just
I
reign
haven't
true?
looked at accurate numbers, but it has decreased the use of alcohol, and I think tobacco is declining every single year. I think even fewer people smoke today. The use of snus has increased though.
Ugh,
But the amount of
fucking
tobacco
snooze.
smokers in the last 10 years has been decreasing by a lot. So it's definitely going downhill in numbers, which is an uphill, or in this case, a positive thing for Finnish kids and youth.
Yeah, snooze
They just don't like it.
Snooze is intense, man. My Swedish friends
Using alcohol is intense.
Yeah, my Swedish friends love to do this like thing where anytime an American visits, they try to peer pressure them into doing snooze and really downplay how intense it is. And like I don't know, I've had some experiences with tobacco, but it's just so like it's so heavy and rich. It made me like jittery. Oh God, I know you're sitting there like a good snooze. I could see you fucking love it. I could see.
I used to like my sister, my older sister, actually told me about using snooze because she's an athlete. She was in like a bikini fitness Finnish championships and stuff like that. She's super into like everything athletic, and I'm just a guy who plays guitar. I'm a bit chubby now that I've quit smoking actually for over a year, and I actually like one of my community members in chat.
I forgot you're a
Cat,
tobacco guy. Yeah.
She brought up that I've been smoke free for over a year, so 14 months actually now, smoke free after 15 years of smoking and using snus. So I'm happy to to be able to get rid of something that I was so badly addicted to. 'Cause
Nice, dude.
tobacco is super addictive compared
Yeah.
to alcohol. For alcohol, I'm like, I can go on a 5-day drinking spree, but then I can go 2 months without it and not even bat an eye. Like I wouldn't even care.
Yeah.
But with tobacco, it's like you do it or you don't.
I feel you. Yeah. I luckily have never felt addicted to tobacco, but I have moments. Usually if I'm like fairly drunk or pretty tipsy and I'm like feeling very sociable, and sometimes I'll walk outside and see a bunch of smokers and be like, "Oh hell yes." And I'll walk over and make a new friend. I have this weird thing where like sometimes I used to be, believe it or not, a lot of people don't believe this, but I used to be an introvert. Like as a kid, I'm one of those people that I haven't been extroverted my whole life. I was super introverted and had really extreme social anxiety, and my family was very nonchalant about it, and they kind of did the like, you'll get over it, just get out there and meet some kids. So it was tough for me until I got to like
that's easy.
Yeah, like 16ish, like young adult age, when I could start just being independent. That's why I liked games so much, because I could talk to people that I actually got on with, and being in a small town made it harder because it's like a smaller subset of people. So like one little fuck up and the whole town hears about it. Everybody remembers everything, that kind of thing. Where was I going with that? Fuck, I lost my train of thought. I started thinking about having social anxiety, and a whole flood of memories came back. My God. Why did I bring that up? What were we just talking
Trip
about?
down memory lane.
I had one of those senior moments, dude.
That's all right.
What were we
it's good
talking
to
about right
memorize.
before that? What?
You were talking about being an introvert while we
Before
were
that.
young, and
Right-
before that,
What triggered me to bring up the introvert thing?
I actually don't remember. We're just gonna. I was talking about snus and alcohol and how, like,
Oh.
I don't know. It's not use of drugs, but the use of substances that basically made you more social with people in Iceland.
Oh,
and all
yeah,
that
yeah.
stuff,
So
you
I
know?
flipped. I flipped. That's what it was. I was
flipped.
super
Yeah.
introverted, and then once I like got into partying a bit in high school, like alcohol and pot and stuff, like that like allowed me to have some social lubrication and hang out with other people that also needed social lubrication. And then once I kind of discovered esports and stuff in college, that was when I really broke out of my shell and practicing doing commentary. And those first couple esports events I went to, like I think I mentioned it in the book, but like my whole
Yeah.
thesis at the time was esports is ahead of its time. So even if I have to pay to go to events and get experience, I want to have experience in this 5 years from now when it's mainstream and cool and everyone's trying to get into it. So even if I suck, I can still say I've got 5 years in the game. So
Right.
when like my first couple MLGs that I went to with like my old business partner at the time, and like I flew in by myself, and I have $1,500 in my bank account, and the trip costs $800, and that's like before food budget and that kind of stuff. So you're staying there and you're like drinking water, and you're like, I'll eat your leftovers, kind of thing, and I had to force myself into that environment where it's like, all right, I can't run to the hotel and hide because it's costing me an insane amount of money to be here relative to what I have. I have to make this worth it. I have to meet people. I have to like meet. The whole goal was I was running tournaments, so I wanted to meet pro players, shake their hand and say, hey, I run this series of tournaments. It's on Friday nights. We'd love to have you sometime. We could, here's the prize pool, whatever. It's super legit. I'm in it for the long haul. You're fucking awesome. And that was like our whole goal was the more people we could do that with, the more likely they would respond when we reach out to them online and say, hey, instead of going like, hey, we're playing and we got this tournament for $50, it's, hey, I'm that guy that you met at this event on that night. We're doing a tournament. Do you want to play? And that was a huge catalyst to go from like super amateur dumb open to like, oh shit, your finals is like 2 legit players playing a best of 5 show match. That's pretty cool. But that was, I had to force myself to do that. And that's how I started breaking out of my social anxiety, because at those events, like to maximize our ROI, it's like we were doing interviews. So I had to force myself to go up to players, be like, okay, can I interview you for some, I want to talk to you about how good you are. And then do like a really shitty 3-minute interview on some flip phone and upload it and get 10 views and be like, man,
Yeah.
I don't know what was worth what, but it's all practice, in aggregate. So anyway, I did the full inversion. I'm like what do people call it? An introverted extrovert. I think that's how I identify now. I can do it. I can go to a party and turn it on and be fucking, Mr. Guy. But my average day is mostly sitting alone in my apartment, listening to music, watching TV in the background, and aggressively typing stuff into my computer. I spend a lot of time alone.
I think I started turning a bit introvert when I started doing esports, because the more I got into doing work, the more I started spending time alone, because I was sacrificing my basically my friendships with people. I didn't have time to spend with them. I was always working or working on something or watching a stream, learning from casters. I was doing a lot of collective work while doing school work and playing in a band and creating an album and writing them songs. So I was like doing like 3 full-day jobs for 3.5 years.
That's
which
crazy,
was very
man.
straining and very stressful. But I got them all done. I released an album and I finished my thesis and I finished my school, and now I'm actually working DPC for the first time. So I feel like mom didn't raise a quitter in this case. But I think I struggle with interaction with people these days. It's much easier for me to look at the camera and talk to people that I don't know than meet them live and
me
talk
too.
about what I do. It's super hard. It's super difficult. Because I also feel kind of, I don't know, do I feel bothered by it? But I don't know what to say and how I feel like the other people will see me. Am I, bragging if I just talk about my normal day? Like, hey, we went for a couple drinks with Zyori. We had a good time. Yeah, he's got like, 85,000 followers on Twitter. So this guy's bragging. I don't know what they're thinking. Are they enjoying my company? Or am I feeling very bothered about this? And should I just keep on moving, say hi, thank you, and give you an autograph and move on? So I don't know. It's tough sometimes, and I feel like I'm becoming more introvert than the extrovert person I was before. So you flipped before, and I feel like I'm in that reverse kind of right now.
Yeah, no, that's funny. And I do feel like I'm flipping back in terms of I now it's with crypto stuff where so much of my life is spent talking to blockchain and crypto people. And that's still a relatively small subset of the population, I would say. And it's getting harder and harder for me to, let's say, enjoy engaging with non-blockchain or non-esports people. I can.
Right.
I can
It's
go
becoming
on
more
a
serious.
Right. I can go on a first date with just some random person I meet on Hinge or Tinder or something. And yeah, sure, we talk about the weather, some topical bullshit, but it's getting more and more rare that I meet people outside. Like, you know, if I go to an esports event or I go to a crypto event, obviously I meet really cool people there. But just in my daily life, most people don't like. There's a difference. And I think I've been summarizing it to people where even if you're a blockchain person and we totally disagree about like the nuance of what we're doing, like I'm all in on our chain, like you're a Solana maxi, this person's a Bitcoin maxi, regardless, like crypto people, I feel like, tend to see the world in terms of problems and solutions. And we might disagree on like the exact problems and the priority of the problems and the best solutions, but we can still have these like really engaging philosophical debates of like, why do you think Bitcoin's better? Why do I think Ethereum's better? You know, why does somebody think Solana's better? Like all of that, it's not just people yelling at each other of like, mine's more, you know, it's not just about like stocks and financial returns. For a lot of people, it's about emerging technology. I also often say to people, 90% of crypto and blockchain is garbage, but the 10% that is really good are like, that's where the people that are going to change the world with the next like generation of technology are building. And that 10% is what really excites me. So I agree when people go like crypto is mostly like terrible. Like I hate to use the word scams, but a lot of it is, you know, I kind of agree, but you really sometimes have to sift through that noise and focus on the like, whoa, some of the stuff, like the really cutting edge stuff here with the, you know, non-anonymous builders that are just trying to build these new public goods. They're really trying to solve like really big human problems that nobody's ever really solved before on this scale.
Yeah.
And again, like they're imperfect solutions right now, but I respect the attempt. And I think that's like just so interesting. And to me, that's so overwhelmingly interesting. I do it every day, dude. Every single day I think about the blockchain and talk to people about it. And a big part of my job is just explaining it to people and selling it internally at big organizations and evangelizing the technology and answering questions and confirming or disaffirming misconceptions and all this kind of stuff. So, how do I engage with people that aren't interested in that world at all? People that, like, when I talk about it for 5 minutes, go, like their eyes just roll over. Like the person that I've been sort of seeing in Colorado, like I don't know, did you see that I minted my dreads and that I sold my dreads as NFTs? Did you?
I noticed that actually. Yeah, I think I messaged you about it.
Oh yeah. You were like, is this
This
fucking
is
real? I launched it in a weird way where it did look a little fake, but it is like, so there's 36 of them. We've sold 6 so far. It's like a super limited collection. Each one is a unique like rendition of the actual dreads that I took pictures of and sent to the artist to make like, hey, this is like a 1-to-1 mirror of the real life physical dread that I have stashed away in a locked box. So it's kind of like a Zyori founder token type thing where it's like an exclusive club for hardcore Zyori crypto fans. Are
they hygienic? You know?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, they're fine.
All right. Yeah, because I don't know anything about.
Yeah,
that.
they're just hair. Yeah, it's all good. It's not alive, so it doesn't like fester or anything. They're not like moldy or anything like that. They've been in safe storage. I've had them in layers of like bag in a box in a box kind of thing. So they're pretty.
Okay, yeah. So it's kind of the same when I had. It would be hard for you to imagine, but I actually had really long hair up till here. I had like a 50 centimeter real. I was a real metal dude when I was a teenager.
Oh wow.
So I cut that entirely off. And I stored it in a bag of a bag of a bag, and I was supposed to sell it for chemotherapy, but apparently there was some mistake with it at some part of the process where we were missing like some kind of way to preserve it better. I don't know what, but there was some requirement that we missed, so I was unable to sell it.
Well, these will be like for an art installation or something. We'll figure out what to do with the dreads. You know, maybe we'll make it like a DAO art installation or something. We'll probably do some charitable causes. You know, the group that I've had, we had our first dread meeting this morning actually with the dread holders.
Dread meeting?
Yeah, the dread holders, dude. Hey, dude, it's all about the VIP status these days. That's what it is.
The dread holders. Holy shit, that sounds like a World of Warcraft.
Did you read the article though? Because if you own a dread, you're guaranteed you get 30 minutes of talk time with Zyori every 6 months for as long as you have the dread. That's like a lifetime membership to Zyori
Wow.
Consulting, dude. How much do you
Very
value
cool.
access to Zyori? And of course, you know me,
cool.
dude. If you're willing to spend an ETH on one of my dreads, like I'm probably gonna talk to you way more than that, dude. I'm like already friends with all the dread holders. They're pretty fucking cool people. it's a
Damn.
wild kind of thing. So anyway, like I bring that
That is
up
wild.
because that is like, and I think this is the first time somebody's like minted their hair on the blockchain like that. So it is like a really wild thing, and I haven't advertised it too hard because I really want them to go to people that think it's cool and like value this like kind of social art experiment that we're doing here. You know, this is like a really, and if you look at the post I made, I'll just link it real quick. It like I wrote like lore for them at the end. So it's like, you know, it's a cute thing, man. I put some effort into it. You know me. Sorry, it takes me a sec to find the link.
That's all right. It just sounds like a real wild west. Which
Yeah.
I think
So, but trying to
describing about the whole,
explain that to someone that you're dating that doesn't do anything crypto, and they're like, "So you're selling your hair?" And it's like, "No, it's an NFT version of my hair." They're like, "So what's an NFT again?" Like, "Well, it's this like wrapper that you can put digital media into. It's usually artwork, but this is like 3D art." And they're like, "So why would somebody buy it?" I'm like, "Well, you know, people have made a lot of money on crypto, and it's like a fan thing, and some people think that I'm really cool, so having like a Zyori collector's item is really awesome." It's just like, yeah, but how much is an Ethereum? Just like somebody's gonna buy your hair for $4,000. It's like, well, not gonna. 6 people have already.
Yeah.
And like that is such a weird
nuts.
and when you say that, then I start getting self-conscious of like, I'm not trying to gloat. Like it's not, I don't want to say it's not real money, but all that Ethereum I've just put back into other NFTs. It's not like I took a $20,000 payday and bought a car or something. So it's not It's not one-to-one. I believe in the ecosystem where it kind of just goes back into other crypto investments, but at the same time, it's just something that people really can't wrap their brains around. And I totally understand why, because it is an objectively complex, dense subject that's a little bit intimidating. But all this is to go back to say, like, it's hard, man. I'm actually, I feel like everything in my life is going so much better than I ever expected right now, except for that feeling of IRL community. I don't know my neighbors. I have less friends in real life than ever before. Dating is harder than ever before. COVID has made all those things harder. Maybe since we're going down this rabbit hole, this is not really toxicity related, but maybe it's toxicity adjacent, like scar tissue from toxicity. Let me paint a picture for you. Okay, let's say I'm in a Starbucks. It's 9 a.m. The rush is done, and there's 2 customers in there. It's me and another girl. And let's say she's attractive by whatever your metric of attraction is. You know, wearing a nice outfit. I'm wearing a dress, decent shoes, and we're both waiting for our coffees. And she comes up and says, "Oh my gosh, I love your outfit. You look really fantastic." I have zero ability to read that on the spectrum of, is that a purely friendly, just like she literally likes these clothes and goes, "Wow, that's a surprisingly good ensemble. Well done." Is it the middle ground of this kind of like pity, like she sees that I'm a dude in a dress and is like, "That guy probably doesn't get enough compliments. I'm going to go ahead and like, you know, do a nice social service and just tell him he looks good because that's like a nice thing to do," which is perfectly acceptable. I have no issue with that, but it's a very neutral sort of thing. It's not because they're interested. And then of course, that last side of the spectrum is they're like romantically or they're attracted to me, right? They're like giving me a compliment, hoping that it'll lead to like a phone number exchange or some sort of a like, you know, maybe he thinks I'm cute too. So like, what do I do in that situation? I wonder how many of those times, because that's happened to me multiple times now it's been exactly a year since I like wrote that blog about wearing dresses. So it's been like a year, and that's happened to me multiple times. And every time I just get kind of bashful and go, "Oh, thanks, you look nice." Then I get my coffee and kind of run out. And then how many times does that girl text her best friend immediately and go, "I always put myself out there and nobody ever responds. And I just went there with this guy and he just completely ran away from me." And it's like, I think I'm so self-conscious to be like thirsty or to like hit on people, quote unquote, or like, I think I empathize because we come from such a male-dominated space in Dota. It's like, I see how hard it is for women, and I don't want to be just another guy that's in line of like, "Hey, you're cute. You want to go have dinner and come back?" You know, like, I don't want to be that guy. And I think sometimes I maybe go too far the opposite, where I friend zone everyone right away out of the gate. And I've really been struggling with that recently. So again, like I actually do think that that's like some scar tissue of toxicity, where I'm a little numb to like toxicity on the internet, but it has trickled into my real life in a very real way, where I have this wall that's a little bit hard for me to bring down when I'm engaging with just like regular strangers in a Starbucks situation.
I agree. That's actually a great point, because I've noticed something similar in my own life as well, where I think you phrased it really well. I don't want to be that guy, because I see a lot of that in Finland. Like, was it a nightclub or going to a place with a lot of other people from the opposite sex, or like we definitely have a goal on what we're doing somewhere, or like going to some place. Like, we want to interact with people, we want to get to know more people, we want to maybe find a hookup or whatever. Like the basic idea of going out into town. Like there might be that small feeling for it. And then what I'm thinking in my mind is like, okay, I don't want to be that guy, because she might not be looking for company. She might be really offended by anybody who approaches her. She might have a boyfriend, all that basic stuff. They've already had something bad happen to them. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I'm going to be the guy to cause something bad to them if I go to talk to them. And then they always say, like, you just got to be brave. You need to be yourself, and things will go well. And then when you finally muster that courage, you get turned down so bad, you like almost get a slap to your face because you made it look so awkward. And you don't have that courage for like what? For me, I've been 5 years single now, because I don't want to be that guy.
Coming up on 2.
What the other one was like.
I'm running a pretty good gauntlet here. It's not amazing. I think I was remarking at how much easier it is when you kind of present as straight and you're talking to another person that kind of presents as straight, at least by like general social assumptions, because it's a pretty straightforward interaction. And then like the next layer is, are you both single? Okay, cool. Are you reading any vibes? Okay, cool. And then you kind of go down that like, funnel from there until, sweet, we're going to go like on a legit date. I think with me, there's a little complication at the beginning, where more often than not, people assume that I'm gay. And I've actually gone out with a couple of male friends where they're attempting to wingman for me, and everyone we talk to just thinks that we're a couple. And I go, that's a totally reasonable assumption, and I see why you think that, but fuck, how do I go out with my male friends and just pick up chicks like all my other male friends do? Yeah. Gosh darn it. It's like I haven't cracked the code on that yet. I don't know. Me neither. Maybe that's not society's fault or my fault. I am a bit of an outlier, and the system is not designed for outliers. So that is just a reality of the system. That is, I don't even know if that's sad. I just think that's a reality and something I gotta process into my workflow.
I guess that's something that I sometimes hate to say, and you hate to preach what you practice, or practice what you preach. So I think that fits better. Time will tell, I guess.
Yeah. It's tough out there, but I definitely, gosh, man, even now, like I say gosh instead of God. Like I really feel an obligation to be PC with my language these days. I've been on that spectrum for the last 8 years or so, of like the more time I've spent broadcasting, the more I remember in 2011, it was like a big debate. Like, this is how far the needle has changed, right? The R word, RAPE. That used to be like a really common word you would hear, especially in like Dota and League, like in lane, like I R-worded him in lane. There's multiple R words now, I guess. So that R word. And like, you really don't hear that at all anymore. And I remember in StarCraft 2, people kind of defending it. And there was one really defining moment where the late, great In Control was on a podcast and said, listen, man, it doesn't matter if it's 1 or 0 or 100. Like, words like that can trigger people in the audience that you don't even know are listening, that have had traumatic experiences. And he's like, think about how many words there are in the English language. It's your fucking job as a person with a microphone to be good at talking. How about you open up the dictionary, you read a fucking book, and you find a more articulate word to express yourself? And if you're telling me that that is too challenging for you to handle, then you should probably find another fucking job. He didn't say it that aggressively. I'm absolutely paraphrasing with my own lens, but like, I'm choking up a little bit just thinking about like his memory and the fact that he's not here anymore. But fuck, man, I think that's such a good way to just to break that down of like, why are you clinging to this one word that has so much negativity and terrible stuff attached to it, when you can communicate the same thing you're trying to probably communicate what you're trying to say even better with other words. I think like real conversations like that really hammer at home are what help shift the needle, where on an individual level, people go, fuck, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to die on that hill. I don't want to be the guy that defends that. Like, you're right. He made that sound pretty indefensible, you know? And that was like the key moment. I think like 2011, maybe 2012. And ever since then, I've thought about like words a lot more and like, all right, some things you need to just kind of like work out of your vocabulary and recognize like times change and you just got to let it go. Or you're going to be that guy that's like hanging on to the old times just because, well, when I was a kid, that wasn't a bad word. Like, well, bitch.
Exactly
it's
the way we started this podcast.
It's changing.
When I was a kid.
Yeah. So anyway, now these days, like I feel like just over time, it's just more and more like, why? I don't know. I think you can be edgy with concepts, but when it comes to basic vocabulary, why not just try to use more wholesome words given the option? You know, it's like what we say in Axie a lot. Part of why this community is good is because people feel invested in it. And if you care about your community, it's like, why not just try to make it the best form of itself? Like if we're building this thing from the ground up, why don't we just at any given point make it the best version of itself? So like given the choice, if you could be a toxic piece of shit to somebody or try to be positive and uplift somebody, why not choose the positive one, all things equal, you know? And if you can instill that ethos on a ground level, shit, man, maybe we can build something fantastic.
It's very possible.
Yeah.
That's what we.
You're getting into Axie one of these days, bro. I'm gonna keep working you until you finally dive in.
We've definitely had a lot of discussions on it, so I won't back up on my word, but.
We need you, bro. We need good brains like you, dude. The social element is a big part of what we're doing. Like on a very high level, like for real, it's one thing to say, yo, that mall sucks. Let's build our own mall. All right, we're starting to build our own mall. The mall gets built. Well, now what do? What are the fucking rules? How do we self-govern our own mall and make one that doesn't suck? That's a little bit what we're doing right now. You know, like we're at the very beginning of that, but that's like the idea behind Axie Nation of, you know, the AXS is a governance token. What's our governance model? How do we like self-manage? Sure. What are the rules in our system? So a lot of this social stuff that you're talking about is like really fascinating and interesting to understand as we, you know, scale the nation. And, you know, we have a lot of users that are like new to the financial tools, new to crypto, new to like just this whole wave of technology that they're getting plugged into. So understanding like the psychology and their experiences and just all this kind of stuff, like the social side, you know, one of the key words of the stuff you're working on is like really important to us over here at the Axie side. So I say that not just as I like you, man, we need you in Axie, but for real, we need people like you that are gamers at heart, into like, you know, gaming for good, but also like have skills from the real world that can help us gamers game better. You know, like that's a really valuable skill set. So
It's very true. It's very true.
If the real world rejects you, buddy, I think you could make some friends over here. We're very accepting of newcomers.
I do see there's a lot of good stuff. I think there was a good conversation going on as well with not only just NFTs, but the whole idea of like cryptocurrencies and people earning money for games. I think it was Grimes who was talking about it on
very
Instagram
recently.
and on TikTok.
Like last week, I think, a couple days ago.
Yeah. And I listened to that and I was like, she brings out some really good points here about people making like a monthly wage from playing a game. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense for a basic person to hear. Like they're playing a game, they're making money through it, and on their spare time they can look after their mothers and their fathers, for example. Like, man, that's actually like that's a pretty decent thing for a very basic thinking person, for example. Like, can definitely see that there's a lot of stuff in store for the future. Like you said, you're still kind of building, you're making the foundation. I could be the guy to run the ice cream cone stand in the mall.
Okay. You know? Well, Axie Town is going to need somebody to run the ice cream stand. So we got a front runner here. Wait, somebody's going to need to run the official Axie pizza shop too, and it's going to have to be open at weird hours because Axie gamers game hard, and sometimes that means late night gaming sessions and late night fueling sessions. So yeah, we need some Domino's style delivery up in this thing. That's real.
That's the stuff we do in Finland. We get out of the bar, we head put up for the first place that's open and sells us kebab or pizza, and then we go to sleep. So talking about weird opening hours for sure. Morning 5 has to be open.
Yeah. All right, dude. Well, this has been fantastic. I love the Zyori +1 vibe. We've been at this for like an hour and 40 minutes, and the time has kind of flown by. And
it has.
I'm getting hungry, and I certainly don't want to take up too much of your time. But, buddy, I appreciate you so much. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate your work both in esports and the real world. It's impressive to me that you were studying this whole time and casting all those games in multiple different languages. Yeah, don't burn out too early, dude. You know, make sure you're not burning that candle at both ends. Just one end, you know. And
Just one, exactly.
yeah, make sure you're taking some time off. We did our big Creator Cup event Friday night, and yesterday I woke up at 2 p.m. and just got dressed and went out to an Italian dinner. I was like, you know what? We just had a big win. I got to treat myself. It's a little sad that I'm doing it alone because we had to work it remotely, but you got to treat yourself, buddy. So make sure. Did you treat yourself? By the way, thesis done. Did you go? Did you get yourself a pizza? You know, a whole cheese pizza just for me. You go get the steak. Like for the Creator Cup, the winner went out and she took a picture with the trophy and a steak dinner.
I saw.
And there were 2 steaks, and I was like, I love that. She got 2 steaks and ate them both, but one of them was for the trophy.
Awesome.
That's badass. This girl parties.
That's badass. that was really cool. Yeah, I definitely did party out. We had a great time with some close friends. I wanted to like, can we just have this one night where we just get drunk, we have fun, no drama, no worrying about the world. Can we just have fun today? And we did. We had a whole lot of fun on that night. And I think there's one thing that I wanted to share. You've said a lot of warm words and a lot of compliments on this and that. So I think I want to end with one good sentence. Something that kind of grew on me when I was studying social services and I went to tutoring. So I was basically teaching new students who started at the university on how to find their classrooms, what do they do, what books should they get, what kind of, like the basic stuff. And then we went out to party with them and kind of bonded together because we were like not their teacher, but the person in between who helps them with everything. So tutor. One lesson I taught to them, which I didn't have when I started my schools, we did not have a very good community with our class. We grew into like 6 or 7 different groups of people of 4 and 5. I felt like I don't really fit into anything, so I kind of felt like I was left out, kind of. But it was also because I have the same ideology or the way of thinking with the other people, but that wasn't the main point to it. What I wanted to state to all those new students was, do things together. Don't leave anybody out, because no matter what they look like, no matter how they talk, if they're a bit challenged, if they're super smart, don't leave anybody out, because you're at the first week of school. The further you go, and if people are already broken in between, it's going to make your road so much harder. So take care of everybody. Take care of another person. If you have something to give, they will receive and give back. It's giving common courtesy to other people and understanding that there's so much to give, but there's so much more to gain. And the whole idea of sticking together, creating friendships, creating whatever the friendships may bring forward, it all starts from giving to another person. And that was what I wanted to teach to all of those kids. Yeah. We went into beating every other campus in our university for the best campus, whatever, athletics, Olympics, whatever. My group won 2 times in a row during that year, and I was super fucking proud of that squad. And you could really see, like, after 3 or 4 months of being together, that they were one tight unit, and they could make some crazy shit happen. And that really made my heart melt, and I cried.
That's awesome, man. No, totally. Isn't it remarkable how often we take for granted the importance, especially for young people, of just saying things like that out loud and firmly? Like, hey, it's worth it to give more than you take. It's worth it to stop and help your community, no matter what the circumstances, or whether that guy was a jerk to you or whether he deserves it or not. Being a good and wholesome person that cares about the collective good and within reason tries to contribute to that collective good is just fucking worth it. Like, all things equal, that's the stuff that people are going to remember, and that's the stuff that's going to pay hidden rewards from maybe you pick somebody up who's worth nothing now, but years from now, they're worth a whole lot. And that stuff comes full circle in really weird ways you'll never expect. And it also swings the other way. If you were that jerk that didn't pick them up, sometimes people remember that. And when the tides change 5 years removed, you might be wishing that you were a little bit more empathetic when the roles are reversed. So it's all powerful stuff to keep in mind, man.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been a crazy good 2 hours, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, totally a pleasure. And like I said, open invitation. I think Britt summarized it well. He already has the Axie spirit. I think you've encapsulated a lot of what our community is all about and aspiring to be. So we're not going anywhere, bud. We'll still be here. So get your esports kicks, get your, get a few more notches on the belt, and then we'll bring you in and you can, be an up-and-comer here in the Axie space, We got Axie Caster number 1. But no, I really can't wait one day. I really want to visit Finland. I really want to do a Nordic tour and get to Denmark and Norway. Maybe swing by Sweden to say hi and hit some saunas in Finland.
I mean, you're more than welcome to come to Finland. Just hit me up and we'll gather around some people and we'll have a great time.
Yeah, we'll rock out. You can shred. I'll scream into a mic. It'll be great. We'll do a live stream.
Man.
Dude, Instagram will love it. Absolutely. All right, buddy. Well, take care and have a good one.